That's a big ass dog. All right, welcome back to TechniqueWOD. Today we're going to talk about snatch balances and all the variations of snatch balances, heaving snatch balance, pressing snatch balance, and drop snatches. All right, Mike's going to be my demo guy today, so go ahead and show them a snatch balance just so everyone knows what the hell we're talking about. There you go, nice and casual. Go ahead and go to the side one time. All right, beautiful. All right, so more or less, if we come back normal, he's taking the bar from his back and he's giving a little bit of a dip and drive, and then he's landing in a full squat position, and then he's coming out of that in an overhead squat position. So obviously a prereq for snatch balances is being able to do a perfect overhead squat. So if we look at a perfect overhead squat, you can see Mike has his elbows all the way locked out, knees are out over the toes, heels are flat on the ground, posture is very upright. If he stands up and then turns to the side again, same thing. Elbows are all the way externally rotated as much as he can. He's trying to turn his elbow pits towards the sky. Nice neutral spine, hip below the knee. Again, heels are on the ground. That's a great position. Bar is right over the center of his foot, and then he comes out of it. Beautiful, okay? So, we're not going to talk about overhead squats specifically in this video. We already have TechniqueWODs on the overhead squat, so go ahead and Google those, and you can check out the overhead squat videos. For today, again, we're going to go over snatch balances and all the variations. So, quickly, we're going to run through all the different variations just so you can see what they all look like. The first one is just a regular snatch balance. So, Mike's going to be standing with his feet shoulder width apart, or sorry, hip width apart. Okay, basically in his pulling stance, wherever he would pull from on the snatch, his feet are going to be in the same spot. And then what he's going to do is he's going to dip and drive, and then you're going to see his feet hop out to whatever his squat stance is going to be. So dip and drive, feet hop out just a little bit. Mike squats very narrow compared to someone like me who squats a little bit wider on overhead squats, so his feet aren't going to hop out very far, but if you have longer limbs and you're more stable with a wider stance, you can hop your feet out a little bit wider. There you go. Go ahead and exaggerate it one time so they can really see the feet hop out.
Trying to.
Okay. There you go. So that's more like I would probably do it on a snatch balance. So that's a regular snatch balance. A heaving snatch balance, he actually starts with his feet in that squat stance, so a little bit wider than his pulling stance, and he's not going to move his feet at all. So he's going to dip and drive, and his feet aren't going to move at all. So his heels didn't come off the ground, he didn't hop, his feet didn't go anywhere, he just gave a little drive and sunk right down to the bottom. Okay, so that's a heaving snatch balance. And then obviously Mike's doing this nice and slow for demo purposes, but once there's weight on the bar, he's going to be giving it a strong drive and then getting under it as absolutely fast as possible.
Named after the great J.P. Herman heaving.
That's right. All right, the next one is a pressing snatch balance. So on the pressing snatch balance, you can really see the technique of it, which we really haven't even dug into yet, where the height of the bar doesn't necessarily change. Mike is just going to push himself underneath the weight. And stand all the way up, goes back on his back, and then he repeats. Okay, so that is a pressing snatch balance. And then finally, the last one is a drop snatch. On this one, it's probably the hardest to do with an empty bar. He's not going to dip and drive at all. He's just going to basically fall under the weight and then push the bar up to drive himself down. There you go. And having a little bit of weight on the bar makes that even just that much easier because he actually has something to push against. Okay. So we're going to start with the easiest one, and we're going to go through the technique and then build to what would be the heavier weights, which would be a regular snatch balance. You could probably do the heaviest weight out of all three of those. Okay. You resting?
I am.
Okay, the first one, a pressing snatch balance. We're going to go over this one first because you can really see what's going on because the movement is a little bit slower. So on a pressing snatch balance, there's no dip and drive quite yet. Again, bar height stays the exact same. He's just going to press himself under the weight, keeping good posture, staying nice and upright, knees going out over the toes, heels staying on the ground, and then he's going to stand up in a good position. There you go, easy enough. Okay, from there, probably the next easiest one based on the amount of weight that you're likely to be able to do is the drop snatch. So again, on this one, there's also no dip and drive, as I said before. He's just going to fall straight down and try and land in that perfect, stable bottom position. And basically you're gonna try and treat this like a gymnast would treat landing from a routine, where you fall down and you freeze and you stick the landing. There you go. Trying to land nice and stable at the bottom, and then once you get good at it, then of course you're gonna try and ride the bounce and come out of the hole. There you go, beautiful. All right, again, the next one is a heaving snatch bounce. So again, on this one, this is the one where you're going to dip and drive and not move your feet. So there you go, so that's nice and slow. Once this gets heavy, you're going to have obviously a bunch of plates rather at the end of the barbell, and it's gonna be heavy at the ends. And so as you dip and drive, it'll kind of spring the weight, and you'll get a little bit of a bounce out of it, and it'll sling you under the weight very quickly. So give kind of a nice sharp dip, and like you would try to bounce the weight. There you go, beautiful. With a regular barbell, you really can't see it, but if you have weight on the bar, then it's going to get a nice whip effect, especially if you have a really nice weightlifting bar, like an Eleiko barbell. So yeah, if you have a good barbell that has a lot of spring to it, then it'll actually push you down extra fast, which is very cool. All right, so that's a heaving snatch bounce. And finally, kind of the main movement that we're working our way up to is a regular snatch bounce. And again, on this one, he's starting with his feet shoulder or hip width apart, in his pulling stance, and he's gonna jump his feet out to his squat stance on his way down. There you go, beautiful. So for the regular snatch bounce, most people can snatch bounce at least as much as they can full snatch, or maybe even more, maybe up to 105, 110% of their full snatch. And in order to do that, you're not going to be able to throw the bar very high. You see when Mike does it, go and demo one more time, you can see when Mike does it with a regular snatch bounce, the bar, the bar's traveling up just a little bit. All right, maybe it's probably making it up to here. Yeah, so 4 or 5 inches over the height of his shoulders. As the bar gets heavier and heavier and heavier, the bar's not going to travel even that far, even though that's not that far. It's not going to travel even that far. It might get off his shoulders an inch or two, and then he's just going as fast as he possibly can into the bottom of that squat position, just in time to land his feet and catch the weight at the exact same time. All right, a few mistakes that are very common with snatch balances. Probably the first, aside from the regular overhead squat mistakes, which we've kind of already covered, the most common one that I see is that people that are brand new to snatch balances, they tend not to want to go all the way to the bottom of the squat, and they'll kind of stop halfway. So they'll kind of stop halfway like that. And a lot of times, especially once it gets heavy, when they stop halfway, they're not low enough to straighten their elbows all the way. So go ahead and land halfway with your elbows bent. They'll kind of stop like that, okay? And then usually it gets awkward because the bar's going to crash on their head and they don't know what to do. Kind of like that. So with those people, you probably need to regress them back to just an overhead squat, and make sure that with the stance they're in, they can get all the way to that bottom position and still be in a good position. If they can't, then you need to make some adjustments to their overhead squat position to make sure that their feet are wide enough, or their toes are angled out enough, or they have the right mobility, or whatever. You got to figure out what the problem is. Once they can get into a perfect bottom position, then they can start working back towards that snatch bounce where they're actually at the very bottom in a good spot. So go ahead and do it one more time. So if someone comes to you and they get halfway down, just ask them if they can pause and just sink down to that position. If they can't sink with a barbell, then you probably need to make some type of an adjustment. Okay. Again, probably the most common one I see is that people are either too narrow with their feet, or in some cases people will hop and they'll be like this, and they're too wide, and then of course they can't sit all the way to the bottom of a squat because their feet are just simply too wide to do it. So foot position matters a whole lot with getting into a good overhead squat position. Cool. Other points that I kind of glossed over initially that are more specific to just overhead squatting in general. Go ahead and go into a bottom of an overhead squat. If they land, and of course if their knees are diving in, if they're toed way too far out, toe way out like that.
Like that?
If they land, their heels are coming in and their toes are way out. That can be a problem, especially if their knees aren't tracking over their toe. Mike's doing a good job keeping his knees out over his toe, but if their knees are in and toes are out, then of course that's pretty hard on your knee because you're twisting at the knee joint rather than simply bending, which is hard on your ACL in particular, and your medial meniscus, which is kind of the cartilage on the inside of your knee. From the side, You're gonna dip very similar to how you dip on a jerk, where if Mike pauses at the bottom of his dip, he has a vertical torso and his knees go forward just a little bit. Okay, he's not gonna do it like a back squat or like a powerlifting style back squat where his hips go back and he bends forward. Okay, it's gonna be a very vertical dip. So if you see someone bending forward, ultimately once it gets heavy, that's really gonna kill their power, and it's gonna really eliminate getting that bounce out of the barbell that we discussed earlier. So you always wanna dip with a vertical torso. There you go. Along with that, when you're dipping with that vertical torso, you're really driving through the middle of your foot. You're never gonna be toe heavy, you're always gonna be very heel heavy. So whenever someone dips and their heel comes off the ground, that's often because they just don't have good enough ankle mobility to do it. If their ankle blocks before, if their ankle blocks there, then their heel will automatically come up off the ground. So they'll either do that, or when they dip, their knees will dive towards each other. If I go ahead and show that. So if you have bad ankle mobility, you'll dip like that, as opposed to dipping where your knees go out, where you're making that diamond pattern. There you go, so that's the bad way to do it. Go ahead and do it correctly. You push your knees out. So you can see Mike's making kind of a diamond pattern where it goes out to his knee and then back into his foot. You'll see that exaggerated with people that have a very narrow stance, where they'll dip almost like that when they jerk, or when they do snatch balances, or when they're doing pulls as well, if they're pulling like this for cleans and snatches. Good. What else do we say? Mike mentioned your focal point. So where you look off in the distance when you're doing a real snatch, you should be looking in the exact same spot when you're doing a snatch balance. So if you're a person that likes to look, 15 feet out in front of you, if you're a person that likes to look 15 feet out in front of you towards the ground, you should look in the same spot when you're doing snatch balances. If you're a person that looks all the way to the horizon, you should look all the way to the horizon when you're doing snatch balances. If when you're snatching, you tend to look up towards the corner of the room, then again, when you're doing snatch balances, you should look in the exact same spot. You wanna make it as consistent as possible between doing an actual snatch and performing the snatch balance, because ultimately the reason you're doing snatch balances is so you can hopefully snatch more and more weight over time, because you're getting stronger, more stable, and really reinforcing that bottom position with heavy weight over your head. As far as when to put these into your training, what part of your workout you're gonna wanna do snatch balances, depends on a lot of factors. For me personally, and I'll let Mike comment on this as well, I tend to like to do lighter snatch balances between like 50 and 70%. For people that really have trouble catching in the bottom of the snatch, kind of as a primer or a way to warm up for the snatch. That way when they start snatching, they've already been in that bottom position, very stable. It's easier to get into a bottom position to go straight down like this than to go from a snatch where you're all the way bent over and you kind of have to sling the weight and then end up in that position. Just to go straight down is easier, so it lets you practice from an easier setup into that bottom position before you jump into regular snatches where you're bent over and there's more to think about and it's just simply more complicated. For people that just need to get stronger, their mechanics are very good on snatches, their mechanics are good on snatch balances, they just simply want to be stronger in that very bottom position, just to make them a little more confident, maybe catching a 5 pound, 10 pound, 20 pound PR, especially people that, once it gets heavy, they tend to like go halfway and then they kind of give up when they probably could have gotten under the weight. You'll see them go and you'll be like, what happened? You stopped halfway. You got scared and you kind of backed out. For those people, if they don't feel confident with that extra heavy, plus 5 pounds, plus 10 pound PR weight over their head, then they're gonna bail out early in some cases. So for those people, after they get done with their snatch work, then I like to do snatch balances heavy with whatever they were finishing up their snatch workout with, plus an extra 5 pounds, an extra 10 pounds, maybe even an extra 20 pounds. Some people can do, like I said before, 105%, 110%, maybe even up to 120%, 20% over their max snatch on snatch balances. They're strong enough to get in that position. And if you can snatch balance, 40 pounds, as an example, more than you can snatch, then snatching an extra 5 pounds isn't that intimidating because you've had that weight over your head many times and it's no big deal. You have any comments on that? I'm gonna give it to you.
I got one quick thing to say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Just one quick thing. No, I just like heaving snatch balance a lot. It worked really well for me in the past. My lower body was definitely much stronger than my upper body in regard to that was probably what was limiting from improving my snatch, and heaving snatch balance really shored up that shoulder strength in that position. So I personally like heaving snatch balance a lot, and I don't think it's done enough. But
Yeah. Nice. That being said, since Mike brought up the other variations, a pressing snatch balance is just straight up good assistance work. If you just want to have more reps overhead and you want to put on a little bit extra muscle mass, then you could do 4 sets of 8 of a pressing snatch balance under control, just to get some pressing overhead work that's a little more specific than just doing a standing press, as an example. The drop snatch is a very good variation, especially for newer lifters that just need reps but don't necessarily need a whole lot of weight over the head when they're doing it. They can just take the barbell and just get used to, dropping into that bottom position, and they're just using it as a drill. Great for warm-ups, again, with just an empty barbell. If you want more information on how to improve your weightlifting, especially the snatches like we talked about today, but also clean and jerk as well, we put together a 50-page free ebook. If you go to flightweightlifting.com, it's FLIGHT weightlifting.com. That 50-page free book has links to the entire snatch video series that we did. Went over the overview of the snatch, the first pull, the transition, the second pull, the catch, and the recovery. So a very comprehensive video series is contained from the links within that book. And then we also have those for the clean and the jerk. Ton of value, absolutely free. So go to flightweightlifting.com to check that out. If you want more videos like this, then you can always go to barbellshrugged.com, click on the TechniqueWOD tab, and all the videos are in the library. Me and Mike, see you another day.
Join the conversation every week after the episode over at barbellshrugged.com. This is also where you'll find new episodes of Barbell Shrugged, TechniqueWOD, Nuggets and Pearls, Barbell Business, Get Change, plus new articles every day on our daily blog, written by us, guests of the show, and some of the biggest names in strength and conditioning. So, go there and leave a comment now. Oh my gosh, wow, that's so cool. Yay, that's so awesome.
did you like this video? If so, subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends.
And if you want even more free, awesome resources to help you reach your fitness goals, plus some updates that we only share over email, head over to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.